Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've gone ahead and put together a list video of 10 DC comic recommendations for new readers. It's still close to the new year and I wanted to do some content that really catered to those that are prospective comic book readers or maybe just jumping in. But whether you're an older or new fan, these are DC classics I think everyone should experience. I can't wait to see what you think, but before we jump in today, I do want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you find something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, The Comic Book Report, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Thank you all so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. Kicking off the DC recommendations for new readers, I'm going to start with none other than Batman Year One by Frank Miller. This is a book I talk about quite often on my channel, and there's a good reason for that. In my mind, there is no greater definitive origin story for the Dark Knight than what I have in the pages here. It blends perfectly a superhero origin story with a gritty crime noir-esque feel. I don't even know how Miller managed it, but this is absolutely peak Frank Miller in my opinion. I really love how this series showcases not only Bruce Wayne Batman's rise to Batmanhood, but also a really compelling look at James Gordon, the GCPD man who will one day become commissioner. We also have great appearances from characters like Selina Kyle, the Catwoman, and a bunch of other notable faces in the Batman mythos. There is something just really organic and visceral about what Miller achieves here. It feels very true. I don't really know how else to say that. Like, yes, it's super heroic, but it feels very grounded, and I really love it for that. This is a book that just absolutely stays with me, and in many ways I feel is just infinitely rereadable. So whether it's your first time jumping into a DC comic or you're here just reading it over and over again, I think that this is definitely a book to check out. It was not the first Batman book I ever read, but I think I could have read it as the very first and been so pleased that this is where I chose to start. And that's why I wanted to recommend it here. There are so many great Batman books out there, but if you're looking to start with one, I think that this is really a good choice. I think the art as well is absolutely gorgeous. There is something kind of sharp and hard to it. The use of shadows, like I said, it really feels like an old school film noir in the best way. I honestly think that there are some good detective aspects to this. There's a lot of crime, thriller, fiction aspects to it, and it all just works together so seamlessly. It's also not an over large collection, so if you just want to check out something quick or breezy that you can read in basically one sitting, I definitely recommend Batman Year One. We're talking about DC Comics today, so of course I'm going to be talking about Superman. To recommend for new readers, I'm going to be talking about John Byrne's Superman run. We have it here in the Man of Steel Volume 1 by John Byrne. It includes not only his Man of Steel, I believe 6-issue miniseries, but also the start of his proper Superman run. Really love this era of Superman. This is considered the first post-Crisis Superman stories, which is after the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this really establishes our DC Universe Superman after that event, and honestly, it's really great. This book here is a standard size hardcover, and like I said, it starts off with that 6-issue Man of Steel miniseries from John Byrne, which is one part Superman origin story, one part just great tales of Superman, and I love it. In this book, we not only have kind of his Kryptonian origin, we have all the great characters you've come to know and love in the Superman just lore. We have Lois Lane, we have Lex Luthor, we have a good handful of people at the Daily Planet newspaper, we have a slew of fantastic villains, and even humble Ma and Pa Kent. There's so much here I really love, and to me, this is some of the run that just screams quintessential Superman. Yes, this content is a little bit dated by today's standards. This isn't an overly modern book anymore, which is wild. But for my money, it is a Superman run and general Superman era that just really withstands the test of time. I think that Byrne really understood what made Superman great, what made Superman stories compelling, and just the core elements of what you need to make this character shine. line. And I think it's all here. We have his values, the integrity, we have this feel of Americana, we have a fun kind of just cast of characters. He not only kind of blazes a new trail, he takes what made Golden and Silver Age Superman stories, made them memorable, and just tries to contemporize it for his time. To me, it reminds me a lot of what Byrne did over at Marvel with Fantastic Four. He took what made the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby era of Fantastic Four great, and he distilled it for that more modern generation in the 80s. And honestly, I see so much of that here. Next up for my DC recommendations for new readers, another Superman title, Superman for All Seasons by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. Wow, do I just love this book. I absolutely do. I read this book maybe a decade or so ago, I think digitally or something. I realized I never even had my own copy, or if I did, I have no idea what I did with it. At any rate, I found a used copy at my local used bookstore last year, and I reread this book. I can't believe how much I forgot in that last decade. This is without a doubt easily one of my favorite Superman stories of all time. It's super accessible and palatable for brand new readers or longtime comic book fans alike. The art from Tim Sale never gets old for me. He's really prolific. I know things like Batman The Long Halloween, which is also good for new readers, or his Color series over at Marvel. These are all things I could recommend from this creative team, and it's particularly the wonderful art of Tim Sale that you can see here. The color palette that Sale uses throughout this work is just really great. There's something about this whole book that just screams Americana, and I see so much of that in the art Tim Sale just does. Whether it's the kind of scene dressing, the settings, the world he paints, it just all really works for me. This is kind of a Superman origin story, kind of the dawn of him taking on the mantle, and it's broken into 4 parts, titled after each of the seasons of the year, and it's just really beautiful. It's a really great reflection on this character, and in some ways it feels a little bit like a slow burn. It's not trying to be an action-packed blockbuster, it's taking its time to just really get into the character, the psychology of Superman, and I just really like it. I think it's absolutely one of the best just gateways into the character of Superman, and I'm just such a sucker for this creative team. Jeph Loeb pens a really wonderful book, and Tim Sale's art just knocks it out of the park. And hey, while I have your attention, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I just want to encourage you to do so. I'm always doing top 10 lists, comic book reviews, hauls, and things like that. Thanks for considering. Now let's keep this list going. Next on our list, Wonder Woman by George Perez. I can't talk about great DC books without hitting the last member of the top 3, Wonder Woman, an incredible character who I'm just really scratching the surface of, but in my mind, this is again one of the quintessential Wonder Woman just eras ever. This is another post-crisis run, this time for Wonder Woman, of course. George Perez, we just lost recently, an incredible comic book creator, and this is a really outstanding beginning to a run. We explore the origins of this character, and he does a fantastic job at just setting the stage and world building. We get so much about Themyscira, the islands of the Amazon here, where Wonder Woman was made and kind of raised, and honestly, it feels like a fantasy epic. We have so much with the kind of Greek pantheon in this as well. We get a lot of understanding about what roots this character, and it just really works. I think all the character motivations are crystal clear. I think the dialogue is pretty tight. The art throughout is absolutely stunning, and honestly, this is a book that it's really easy to just turn page after page after page. Again, we not only get a fantastic kind of setting up of the status quo for Wonder Woman, retelling of their origin, but honestly, a great handful of adventures. We even have Wonder Woman fight Cheetah in this volume. This is the first paperback of the George Perez run. There's a handful of these, but this, again, it's where it all starts post-crisis for me as far as I'm aware. And it's really great. This is another one that it's a little bit older of a comic. I could have easily recommended a more contemporary Wonder Woman series, but I just wanted to give George Perez a little more love, an incredible creator that, again, we lost fairly recently. And I think a lot of people, especially modern comic readers, tend to overlook this run. Not really sure why, but I definitely want to showcase it. I think it's a fantastic place to start as a new reader. And that's something else I want to just say generally about this list. I have some stuff that are very modern as far as the books I'm selecting, and some that are a little bit older. I'm hoping to get a little bit of everything so that I can make on-ramps for as many prospective readers as possible, who frankly might have all different interests. To that end, my next recommendation is a very modern title. We're going to be looking at Nightwing, Leaping into the Light. by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. This is the ongoing Nightwing run that has been very celebrated in recent years. It's one of my personal favorite Nightwing runs I've ever had the pleasure of reading, although there have been a good handful I think are quite good. At any rate, this is Nightwing. This is a volume 1 kicking off this run. It's a perfect place to start as a brand new reader. It helps if you know a little bit about Dick Grayson, the once Robin, who is now his own hero, Nightwing. But it's basically his exploits at this really interesting crossroads in his life. He's recently come into some money. He's trying to reestablish himself, get grounded into his city once again in Bloodhaven. And honestly, it's a just great on-ramp for brand new readers to check out. The art from Redondo is just ridiculous. It's absolutely stunning, gorgeous. We have some beautiful kind of scenic splash pages, spread pages. It's really hard to describe how beautiful this is unless you're seeing it with your own eyes. I'm not even sure my video quality is doing it justice, but it is just absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful. And the writing is really tight as well. Tom Taylor is a comic book writer I've come to really love in recent years. Love his stuff with All New Wolverine, Deceased, and so much more. And this is just a really good example of it. I think one of my defining features for this writer at the Big Two is how much he really just honors, respects, and understands character voice. I think every time he depicts a DC or Marvel character, they just feel like themselves. I don't know how else to say that. It really feels like Dick Grayson when I'm reading Tom Taylor's Nightwing. It really feels like Barbara Gordon when I'm reading Tom Taylor's Nightwing. And I really like it. It's so easy to get absorbed in what these characters are up to, what they're saying to each other, their dialogue, the sense of pacing and setting and scene. It just all works so seamlessly together that I kind of say about Tom Taylor, it almost doesn't matter what he's writing these characters to do. If he's writing it, I'm going to be interested. The fact that it's a great story is just the cherry on top. But again, I had to recommend this to new readers out there, a perfect place to start a DC comic. Next up on our DC recommendation list for today, Harleen by Stjepan Sejick. This was written and illustrated by Sejick, and honestly, this is an absolutely incredible read. This is part of DC Comics' Black Label imprint. These are more mature or adult-oriented books. There's nothing too graphic or anything in this book necessarily, but it just has a lot more like adult themes or subject matter. But wow, is this an incredible book. As you might tell here just by looking at it, it is an unusual format. It's an oversized with kind of the square pages, so you have a gigantic rectangle when you open this up and get the spread. It definitely prioritizes the art first, and with a book like this, that is absolutely a win. Sejick understands the character and psychology of Harley Quinn, the Joker, and even Batman. And in this tale, ostensibly, it is a Harley Quinn origin story. So if you're a fan of this character, maybe from pop culture or films or an animated series, and you have yet to read a comic book series about them, this is your one-stop shop and my highest recommendation for this character. It's an easy kind of one-and-done book that you don't need any real background in this character or universe to enjoy, and yet you can read a full experience here as a one-and-done book and just feel like you had a good ride. Like I said, it is a Harley Quinn origin story. It's a weird, twisted love story of how she gets infatuated with the Joker, how she comes to really dislike Batman, and overall just deals with her kind of psychological degradation, empowerment, finding herself in the midst of everything. There's so much great psychology and kind of subconscious kind of exploration of things in this book. It just really shines. The art, like I said, is gorgeous. We have a lot of kind of realistically depicted characters and really dreamlike events kind of all juxtaposed on each other at different points in this book, but it just works really well, and the experience was absolutely gripping from page 1 all the way to its incredible resolution. Wonderfully paced, and a comic that really has stayed with me, and one, honestly, I think I'm due to reread. Next on our list today, Grayson by Tim Seeley, Tom King, and Mikel Janin. So this might be an unusual choice for a new reader, but let me justify it for you. This is another Dick Grayson-led comic book series, but this time he is not Nightwing, he is not Robin, he is a secret agent working for a really corrupt espionage clandestine organization known as Spiral. We as the readers know he's infiltrating this organization at the behest of Batman to try to topple it down from the inside, gain intelligence, and all sorts of things. But he gets absorbed into a larger kind of conspiratorial world, and it's just a really fascinating read. The art from Mikel Janin is beautiful, atmospheric, and interesting, and the writing from Tim Seeley with help from Tom King is just really wonderful. There's a lot of humor and fun bits in it, but it also takes itself really seriously as a spy thriller. This is really the closest I've ever seen to a James Bond-like series from the big two, whether Marvel or DC Comics, and honestly, this is something on paper I'm not sure why this works, but it just does. It's not an overly long series. In fact, you have all of it collected in this one omnibus edition, and it's infinitely readable. I don't think you need to know a ton about the greater DC universe to appreciate this book, and I think that the creators do a great job of establishing the baseline status quo right from the beginning. You can absolutely read this as a one-and-done collection, and honestly, I think it's very accessible and interesting. Why I put it on here for new readers for DC Comics is because there might be some people that don't enjoy superhero comics whatsoever and might find the whole idea of DC Comics a bit passable, but maybe you love spy thrillers, maybe you're interested in a character like James Bond, and you just think this sounds gripping. For you, that's why I included it in this list. And for others that maybe are already comic book fans, if you haven't read Grayson, check it out. It's a ton of fun. Next on our list today, The Flash by Mark Waid Omnibus. This is really a fun read. This is a volume 1 of a probably couple volume omnibus set from DC Comics. At the time of this recording, this is the only one we have released so far. You can also find Mark Waid's run on Flash collected in different trade paperbacks or single issues, digitally, what have you. I recommend Mark Waid's Flash for a couple reasons. This is a very essential Wally West Flash comic book read. This is also the comic book run that really established the Speed Force in the Flash mythos in general, and it really pushes this whole franchise forward. My favorite Flash run of all time is probably the Geoff Johns run, at least at the time of this recording, but this is a very close second for me, and I actually think it might be in many ways a better start to Wally West. I think Geoff Johns does a fantastic job with Wally West Flash as well, but he also does a really good job of elevating the rogues gallery of villains characters, but I actually think that Mark Waid does maybe a hair better at defining Wally West and making him a very grounded, likable character. It's a very fun read for those that maybe like the Flash TV series or seen him in animation or maybe seen him in live action movies, but don't know where to start reading. This is not the Barry Allen Flash, this is not the Jay Garrick Flash or any of the other speedsters. No, this is Wally West. And honestly, for my money, this is the best Flash. He's the best one. I'm just going to say it. And this run is a ton of fun. This comic book run came out really through the 90s, but honestly, these issues still really hold up today. I really enjoyed this omnibus. It was a great way to read a huge handful of this run all in one go under one hardcover. We have a fantastic Flash origin retelling for Wally West in this run. We have some great heroes and villains, the kind of establishment of Wally West's supporting cast of characters, and it all just works so well. This was a really fast read and one I thoroughly enjoyed. Cannot wait for a volume 2. Next up on our DC Comics recommendations for new readers, did you think I was going to leave you with only one Batman recommendation? Of course not. Today we're talking about Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo Omnibus Volume 1. This is another comic book run I speak about quite often on this channel. In fact, the first story arc included in this omnibus, The Court of Owls, was the first comic I ever reviewed on this channel a couple years back now. But really, this is one of my favorite places to start reading Batman. I still point to year 1 as the definitive origin story place to start, but if you're just looking to jump into a great Batman run, it's going to be this one for me. This takes place during the DC Comics New 52 era, era. Basically, it was a soft reboot of the comic book titles over at DC, making it very accessible to a brand new generation of readers. I do have a soft spot for this era of comics because this is really when I first started collecting comics for myself. Getting into this hobby was right around when DC was doing New 52. And this comic run is fantastic. The first arc in this book, like I talked about, is called The Court of Owls. It has to do with this really kind of behind the scenes organization that is pulling the strings of Gotham that even Batman doesn't know exists until he does. Really, really great storytelling, and that's just the beginning of this incredible run. This omnibus collects the first maybe 3 or 4 major story arcs during this era, and it's one of a 2-volume set that completes the entire run. The art from Greg Capullo is absolutely outstanding. Yes, the character models look a little bit more animated, but it's so visceral and interesting, and I just think the way he does world building and setting is just really beautiful. And then Scott Snyder is just one of my favorite comic book writers of all time. I really love what he does over here at DC. I love some of his more indie work like Nocterra or Undiscovered Country, to name a few. But as far as this Batman run goes for New 52, it's hard to do better for me. I think it's so easily accessible to brand new readers. You don't need to know all that much. New 52 really designed to be catering to those new prospective readers. Highly, highly recommend this run. And last, but certainly not least, I'm going to recommend the New 52 Justice League by Geoff Johns and team. This is a great, great series as well. Like I mentioned in the previous entry talking about the New 52 Batman era, New 52 was DC's soft reboot of their whole universe, and it's so great for brand new readers. This Justice League run introduces you to some of the comic book greats under this publisher. We have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Cyborg, Aquaman, and so many more. This is a really fun one, everyone. So it really starts off with a Justice League origin story, how all of these superheroes met each other. It's set 5 years before the events of the rest of the run, and it's basically how they meet, how they were really dysfunctional, but how they banded together to save the world. Then we fast forward the 5 years, Justice League has been established, these superheroes have been fighting crime for years now, and we just have ongoing adventures after adventures after adventures. Now, this really does feel like a blockbuster of a comic book run in my mind. All the story arcs are just action-packed, interesting, fast-paced, and just a ton of fun. I do love how they balance all of the major characters. I really feel for a team ensemble book. I never felt too crowded with this read. I think everyone got a good voice when they needed it, and it just worked. Like the previous entry, this is a Volume 1 omnibus of a 2-volume set, including basically all of this New 52 Justice League run, maybe barring an issue or two. But it's a really great read. It's compelling, and honestly, recommending a team book like this is a great way to familiarize yourself with the essential DC characters all in one stop. You don't have to read all of their individual comics to get to know the characters. You can read the team book and get a feel for all of the main heavy hitters. And as a new reader, it's a really great way to just get some exposure, maybe see if you like a character here, and then maybe pursue some of their individual books. For that reason, among so many others, I have to recommend Justice League from the New 52 era. And wow, can you believe that? That's already going to do us today for 10 DC comic recommendations for new readers. Yes, DC Comics has some other really just tremendous stories. I really love the Question run. I love so many of the different Swamp Thing titles. There are so many great DC Comics runs. I did try to focus on the most mainstream heavy hitters of characters, or maybe those that are most pop culturally relevant. But within that, I tried to specify a couple different genres and some older comics, some newer comics to give a bit of variety, but certainly there are so many I have missed here. So in the comments below, if you have DC Comics recommendations, particularly those applicable to brand new or prospective DC Comics readers, please shower the comments with your recommendations. I'd love for the list to just look like a great one-stop shop for anyone wanting to check out DC Comics. Let me know if mine missed the mark, what you would add to the list, or maybe what was on my list that you really loved. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, maybe a comment, and please check out one of my other videos on your way out. Have a good one.